Hello and welcome to another episode of the Maxi-Geek Show. Today is Friday, September 23rd, and this is episode number 37. This week is obviously a very, very quiet week compared to last week. Last week was beyond insane. If you're not aware of what happened last week was the Tokyo Game Show. There was also the Disney D23 Expo, so there was a showcase from Disney. Then there was the Ubisoft showcase, Ubisoft Forward. Then there was a Nintendo Direct, PlayStation State of Play. Xbox hosted an ID at Xbox stream via Twitch. And then we had TGS, which also had another Xbox showcase. Koei Tecmo, 505 Games, Bandai Namco, Konami, Sega, and, a dozen more here and there. It was an absolutely loaded week, to the point we could talk about everything from the show again that we didn't talk about last week because there was just so much. But we like to stay week to week rather than sort of going back in the news. But yeah, so it's going to be a very, very short episode this week, purely because there's just been it's been fairly quiet across the board. The first thing we're going to talk about is that a long-awaited game has finally gotten a revival. So earlier this week, Sins of a Solar Empire 2 was announced, more than 15 years after the first game released. So this game itself is being produced by Stardock. I was going to say Casino then, but it's not the right thing. So they are the folks doing the publishing, and it is being developed by Ironclad Games. Now it is a full new game. It's not a rebranding of the original, like with plussed up graphics or anything like that. It is a full sequel. The Sins of a Solar Empire is one of the most well-known 4X strategy games. So the 4X strategy is diplomacy, warfare, resource management, and I can't remember the fourth one. So this is a full-blown sequel. It is launching into early access via Epic Games Store at the end of next month. There is no full date for when, or no firm date for when it will be fully released. So it could be any time. 6 months after it launches in early access. It could be 2 years after it launches. There's really no guarantee on any of that. We actually don't have any gameplay for it yet, which is kind of weird. We've got some screenshots where they're showing the ships and planets and such. But that's really it. Even the trailer I was just playing doesn't actually show any gameplay. So be a little wary at the moment until it does go live. It is very nice to see that it has gotten another life. It is something that people have been asking for. So it's nice to see that they're doing it. That being said, because of the delay between it launching in early access and its potential release, unless you're absolutely dying to play this sequel, I'd probably wait a few months until the early access launch at least settles down a little bit. Also during the week, Nvidia announced the next generation of RTX game graphics cards. So Nvidia announced the 40 series of cards, and they are starting to come out in late October, and then November for another sort of them. This is kind of insane because the 30 series only launched at the end of 2020. So here we are 2 years later, and we have a new generation of cards, and Nvidia is saying that the card performance is double, if not more, than the 30 series. So the big thing with this is they're running off a new architecture called the Ada Lovelace architecture. And its big thing is that it will do full Raytime lighting effects at 4K, 60 frames a second, 120 frames a second. So this video that they released is, Cyberpunk 2077 running on the new cards. So you can see here in the bottom corner there's a little green box that says RTX on. So this is when real-time lighting is working, with the game. So all the reflections are accurate. They're, being done correctly based on the way the camera is viewing the world. You can see you're going back and forth here. The big thing, as we just saw there, is Nvidia's DLSS3, which is Deep Learning Super Sampling. It is basically a way for the AI, for the card itself, to create additional frames in between the frames. So, if you know anything about animation, when The Simpsons is being made, or a Disney animated film, or any sort of hand-drawn effect, what they will do is they draw in, they'll draw like every fourth or fifth frame, right? So they'll draw the frame, then they'll draw the frame, 2 or 3 seconds later, right? So when you do the flipbook effect, you can see the motion happening. The in-betweeners usually, for The Simpsons, that was like Rough Draft out of Korea were doing that for a number of years. I don't know if they're still doing it or not. They were the ones that would come in and do all the frames in between the key animation frames. So you'd have the artists in Los Angeles doing the drawings, and then folks in Korea would do the rest of it. This is essentially what DLSS is. So what it does is, if your game is built to run at 60 frames a second, that means your animations that you've created, take 60 frames of animation to complete out per second, of gameplay. If, the game's designed to run at 30 frames a second and you have 60 frame animations, in order to get them to fit, everything has to be sped up and everything looks really fast. So what DLSS does is it says, okay, your game was built to run at 30 frames a second, your animations are running at 30 frames a second. If the person playing it says, no, I want to have it run at 60 frames a second, DLSS takes the 30-second animation, stretches it out, but then fills in all the frames in between to give you more, more animation, essentially, right? And it's not just doing it for the world, it's not just doing it for the characters, it's doing it for the world, it's doing it for the cars, the objects, everything that's in the world to make it look right. Jensen Huang, who's the Nvidia founder and CEO, just said the age of RTX ray tracing and neural rendering is in full steam, with our new Ada Lovelace architecture taking things to the next level. Ada provides a quantum leap for gamers and paves the way for creators of fully simulated worlds with up to 4 times the performance of the previous generation. Ada is setting the new standard for the industry. Now, DLSS is being worked on, it's being incorporated into games like A Plague Tale Requiem, Dying Light 2, Loopmancer, Microsoft Flight Simulator just got the update for it as well. We saw Cyberpunk, but Unity and Unreal Engine, in terms of actual game software, they're taking advantage of it. This is a montage video of the games that are supporting RTX and DLSS 3. So what it's doing is, if you have this card, if you have the ability to have this on, you're going to get a much smoother gaming experience at nothing, no cost to the developer, nothing for your side of things. It's all done by the hardware, and that's really the big thing with DLSS. The other thing too is just the overall increase in technology. So the streaming multiprocessors, with up to 83 teraflops of shader power, right? That is an insane number. 83 teraflops is just astronomically large, but that's a 2 times increase over the 30 series of cards. 191 effective ray tracing teraflops is 2.8 times more than the last generation, right? So it's not just that they've just said, hey, we've just made these slightly faster. It's a massive increase across the board on what these cards can do. Unfortunately, with the insane jump in technology comes an insane jump in price. So the RTX 4090, which is the big behemoth card with 24 gigabytes of RAM, it is $1,599 US and coming out in October. The problem here in Australia is it's $2,959, and in New Zealand it's 3,530 New Zealand dollars. So if you convert $1,599 US to Australian dollars, you're looking around 2,200 or something. Then if you add in the Australia tax and all that, you're probably looking around 2,500. So that, they're adding an extra $450 odd to the price for the card here in Australia just because they can. I think the entire Starship Enterprise tabs would have less processing power than one of these cards. So the 4090 is the granddaddy of the cards, and so that is coming out in October. A couple of weeks later in November, we'll see the release of the 4080 series of cards. Now they come in two variants: the 16GB model and the 8GB model. The 8GB model is the cheapest at $1,600 Australian, whereas the 16GB one that has essentially it's the same card everywhere else except it has double the RAM. Its recommended retail price is $2,200. So these are definitely not cheap, cards. The fact that even for the most basic of cards so far in this line, you could pick up a PlayStation 5 and an Xbox Series X and S or X, sorry, and still have money left over for subscriptions to their game services. Do not get me wrong, these cards will be amazing. They will deliver across the board. The other thing that's a concern though with them is that it's not even been 2 full years between the release of the 30 series cards and the release of these 40 series cards. When the 30 series cards were being talked about, I actually asked the Nvidia folks, have you considered that you're releasing these things too fast? And they said, no, we're doing things pretty okay. And it's like, well, not really, So the 30 series released in, late 2020. So I think like September 2020. The 20 series, which is what I have a 2060 Super in my card. They released in September of 2018. Right, so they were a pretty big jump. But then to put things into context, the 10 series, so the 1080, the 1070, sort of the really big series, they were launching. Where did they launch? They were launching like back in 2016, 2015. Unfortunately, the 10 series had a lot of variants in it, so it's harder to nail down. But even if you assume, late 2016, sorry, it's every 2 years they've sort of dropped a new series. We had the 10 series, then the 20 series, and the 30 series, and then the 40 series. And I don't know about you, but I couldn't imagine anyone being able to upgrade, even at the very base model that they're offering at launch every 2 years. To put into context, your phone that the new iPhone every 2 years, is less than one of these graphics cards. And the gentleman, Jensen, he actually came out to VGC, well, not to VGC, but VGC were reporting on it, that he was saying that the days of cheaper video cards going forward are a thing of the past. The specific quote that he said is, a 12-inch silicon wafer is a lot more expensive today than it was yesterday, and it's not a little bit more expensive, it's a ton more expensive. Moore's law is dead, Moore being the observation that every 2 years the capacity of a chip, or the potential of a chip doubles. The ability for Moore's law to deliver twice the performance at the same cost or at the same performance for half the cost every year and a half is over. It's completely over, so the idea that a chip is going to go down in cost over time, unfortunately, is a story of the past. So that's what he said, in deference to the fact that these cards, $1,600, $3,000 for the card. That is utter bullshit. That is just a complete and utter bullshit statement that anyone who thinks that is lying through their teeth. So, for many years, it was always sort of the joke in the tech industry that, you buy something today, 2 years from now it'll be obsolete because it'll be, the new generation will be twice as fast, more powerful and all that. But we see the opposite happening with game consoles. We see, slight tweaks to the inside. The PlayStation 5's on its 3rd revision. The Switch is on its 4th internal revision. I'm sure the Xbox Series X has had some changes as well. What they do is they can streamline the process, right? They know, okay, we've had this thing out for a while, so we can actually start chopping bits off and reducing the costs and, We see it with the Xbox 360. The thread count, the thickness of the threads on the CPU became much thinner in the later years of the console compared to the early generations or the early versions. And what that meant was that it cost them less to manufacture because they were able to use less materials in the construction of the boxes. So I get where he's coming from. That the technology is actually leaping far further ahead than just doubling. But if Nvidia didn't release, Tabs. If Nvidia didn't release a new generation of card every 2 years, then the cost would come down, right? So I know some people that have bought brand new graphics cards when they first launched because they want to have the best of the best. The problem is that this new card, the CPUs and the motherboards may not be up to snuff to take full advantage of it yet. Not that they need a lot, but it may be there. And that's the problem. As I said, it's been 8 years since the 10 series launched, and when the 1080s, right, when Nvidia released their 1080 cards, they were considered the premium, right? That was the card if you wanted to game on a PC with the best, that was the card you needed to have. The fact that 2 years later that card was rendered obsolete, and let's face it, in those 2 years, it wasn't a massive generational leap, right? From 2016 to 2018, 4K was not a common thing. HDR was not a common thing, right? People weren't gaming at 4K 120 frames a second back then. So the generational leap was very minor. And again, I'm not discrediting the jump that Nvidia have done from the 30 series to the 40 series. But the fact that, they're pumping these things out, essentially as fast as a studio can make a Call of Duty title. And then they have the stones to turn around and say, well, actually, no, because everything's so much more expensive now, the costs are going up. It's like, no, that's not, if as you said, Tabs, if they just slow down their cadence, every 3 years would make sense. If Xbox released a brand new, console, or PlayStation released a brand new console every 2 years, not a modification to an existing one, not a PlayStation 5 Slim or a PlayStation 5 Lite or whatever, but an actual PlayStation 6, then a PlayStation 7 and a PlayStation 8, people would be really angry. But it's a different side of thing for PC gamers. They tend to be a little more accepting with that, release schedule, I suppose. I personally, I'm in need for a graphics card. I built my PC. Again, Tabs, the 10 series, it was such a staple for so long, because even when the 20 series did launch, the 10 series dropped in price dramatically. So they kept selling more 10 series cards because the difference between the 10 and the 20 was so minimal. Again, they still were, the 20s were still good, but the generational difference wasn't astronomical because, we didn't have all these things like 4K and all that. So people weren't upgrading to the 20s because why spend twice the amount for a card that's going to give you 20% more oomph for your dollar, when you can get a 1080 or a 1070 or a 1050 for, a third of the price. So I'm due a new graphics card. The one I have, as I said, it's the 2060 Super, and when I built my machine last April, the only thing I didn't put in new was a video card. I kept that from my old machine because it still does everything correctly. Like, I can put Cyberpunk on my machine, run it at high things, just 60 frames a second, all that. It looks fine, plays fine, and everything's there. But that card is now 4 years old. So it's sort of, it's what I would say pushing, this is when I would get a 30 series. But, it just seems to be that it's an unnecessary jump, and it doesn't seem to be delivering anything to any gamer that we were desperate for, right? If this was the ability, offering the ability to do something real time that we'd never been able to do before, then sure, I can see the appeal. But that's not the case. We've been enjoying 4K graphics, 120 frames a second for a number of years on PC and our consoles, and I don't know why we've decided, or Nvidia's decided, it needs to upgrade everything all over again. But hey, they make all this money, so maybe they've got a plan that we're not aware of. Something that they did announce, though, as sort of as a cool thing, is a platform called RTX Remix, and they used that to develop Portal with RTX. So Portal with RTX is essentially exactly what it sounds like. It's Portal but with RTX. So let me just throw this trailer on. So Portal, as you may know, it's coming up to 15 years old in November. So it's a very, very old game. The RTX edition, it's the same thing they did with Quake and they did with Minecraft, is they're adding in real-time lighting effects to, make everything look completely different. Now with Minecraft, it was more just enhancing the lighting, and updating the textures. Here they're redoing everything using RTX Remix. Now RTX Remix is actually an application that anyone can download once it's out later this year, and you can import the textures from a game that you have been playing for 10-15 years, and RTX Remix uses AI to redraw them in 4K. Right, it'll redo everything in 4K. So I think I may have there. So we do. So you can see here, this is Portal, the starting room without RTX enabled, and then this is with RTX enabled. All right, here's just a weighted cube with one of the energy pulse balls behind it. Here's that exact same scene but with RTX turned on. You can see the shadow here alone is being, lit by the ball. The reason why RTX Remix is very, very cool, let me just bring this up full screen. So this is a scene from Morrowind 3, so Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, from back on the PC. Now this released 2001, 2002, somewhere in there. It still looks decent. The art style's still there. Now this is that exact same scene, but remade with Remix. So RTX Remix comes in, it learns where everything is, it learns where all the grooves are, all the texture work, all the bits and pieces, and then redraws everything in 4K. And then because it's redone in the modern settings, it can have all the the high-end lighting, all the bits and pieces. So again, here's the same thing. So here's the original shot from it. All right, and then this is the remixed version of it. So that technology that they're using to do it for Portal, they're doing it, they're going to release it publicly. Now this is very much like a couple of years ago they did the AI drawing thing Canvas. And Canvas was a very, very cool thing where you could take, if you had Paint or MS Paint growing up as a kid, and you drew those basic landscapes. This is blue, so it's the ocean or a river. This is green, so it's the ground. This is another blue because it's the sky. You could do that, and then Canvas would take, it would take that image into an AI application and redraw it, as a realistic, image in real time. So as you were drawing it in your very basic Paint toolbox, it was drawing the same thing in a realistic style. So this is something Nvidia have been working on for a lot of years now, this whole using AI to upscale everything. And unlike the Grand Theft Auto Definitive Editions that we got a number of years ago, or a year and a bit ago now, I suppose, this is being done in real time by the user rather than running a script and letting things do things over a weekend or two, right? So this is a free upgrade, so if you own Portal on PC, you'll get this regardless of whether you have RTX cards or not. If you don't have a card that can do RTX, you won't be able to to take full advantage of it. It is marked as DLC, so it is part of the game, so you can't just download the RTX version on its own. It will still require the full thing. But yeah, as much as I'd love to say I'm going to get a 40 series this year, that's not happening. It's too expensive. It's too pointless. 6 months from now, they'll have the 4050 Ti cards, which will be just as nice, but a third of the price. So I'll wait for those. But that RTX Remix thing, once that's public, once people can start doing things with it, I fully expect to start seeing mods for, the Bethesda games, some old Wolfenstein games, maybe even Halo Combat Evolved for PC, where, they're taking everything and just re-rendering it all out, in fancy new ways. Like Half-Life, the original Half-Life, Source is a great engine, did really well. When they redid Half-Life on Source. Hey, Cody. So, yeah, they did great with that one there, but I'd love to see it go through a remix and see, exactly what's going to come up with it, because, there's just so much potential with it there. Oh, I closed down the wrong thing there. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so, it is what it is, I suppose. As I said, the cards are too expensive at the moment. Even if the generational update is there, $3,000 for a card alone is just a little bit too much. You're right. The other thing during the week is we finally got confirmation that Marvel and EA are making a game together, but it's not the one we expected. Yes, Tabs, that's exactly it. With RTX Remix, they should be able to make some amazing, modern day patches to games, because instead of having, a community of folks redrawing assets from a 10-year-old game, like they're doing with the Elder Scrolls Oblivion for that Sky Oblivion, fan project, RTX Remix can redo it, instantaneously. So that should be interesting. So with EA, EA spun up 2 new studios, over the past sort of 18 months. One is being led by the Halo co-creator Marcus Lido, and there's another one, and I've forgotten his name now. Rumors were that one of those studios was going to be making a Black Panther game. Nothing's been confirmed on that. There's no concrete information to prove that that's happening, but that was the expectation. Then it was announced that one of the studios is actually doing Battlefield content, but they're doing Battlefield single-player content, so they're actually doing stories. So think, the main campaigns from the Battlefield, or like Battlefield Hardline, like Visceral Games did. This is what these guys are working on. So when EA said, hey, we've got an announcement, we're making a Marvel game, people just went, oh cool, it's Black Panther. No, it is not Black Panther, it is Iron Man, and it's not being made by this new studio, which we still have no idea what they're working on, but it's being made by Motive. So Motive Studios, they've shipped one full game on their own. Well, I'll say full in quotes there. And they're working on another one now, and they also did some content for Star Wars Battlefront 2. So Star Wars Battlefront 2, they were the developers that did the single-player campaign that had, the most predictable story arc in existence, because the moment they said, you're going to play as somebody from the Empire, everyone just went, oh, cool. So they're going to turn to the good side, right? That's what we're going to get. And it's exactly what we got. It was so predictable. It was still fun, but it wasn't, what they hyped it up to be. They then shipped out of nowhere. They announced Star Wars Squadrons. Not a Rogue Squadron game, but just a Star Wars flight sim game. That wasn't exactly a full game, but it still, had a nice bevy of features included. And now they're working on the Dead Space remake, which is launching in January of next year. So the studio's been doing pretty well for themselves, since their inception. But this is a whole new thing for them. Now, there's no release date, there's no plot line or anything of this. It's still very early days. But the reason why it's worth sort of paying attention to this is that the man leading the charge for this one is, what's his name? Olivier Perot. He's the guy who led the development on the Guardians of the Galaxy game for Square Enix. So if you have not played the Guardians game that released, a year ago now, it sort of was a bit of a slow start. Like, people didn't really get it at the time because the marketing didn't really emphasize what it was all about. But then it launched, it started getting a lot of word of mouth. People were really happy with it. And then eventually, people started paying more attention to it. It really sort of exploded. So when Square Enix offloaded their, Western developers, so Crystal Dynamics, Eidos, and there was another one in there. When they offloaded them to Embracer Group, a number of folks jumped ship, and Oliver's one of them, and he's found himself at EA, leading another game for Marvel. So that's sort of the reason why, people are sort of, interested in how this could turn out. Is purely because, this game has come out of nowhere. It's got a team that's proven that they can do single-player driven content, with, as I said, the Battlefront 2 campaign, Squadrons, and now Dead Space. We haven't seen a lot of the Dead Space remake. It's been a while since they've shown anything off. But every time they show something, it gets people more and more excited. And now we're getting an Iron Man game. This is not the first Iron Man game. We've had a few over the last few years. We had Iron Man VR from Ilphonic. That was a fun game, but it was PlayStation VR only, so it's very limited in its appeal. And then obviously, if you really wanted to play as Iron Man, you could do Marvel's Avengers, which was done by, Crystal Dynamics. You could play as other characters, but Iron Man was in there as well. Before then, though, the last real Iron Man game we got was Iron Man 3 by Gameloft, which is the mobile facing developers. And then there were the Iron Man 1 and 2 games from Sega based on the movies from the MCU. So with Robert Downey Jr. in those revoicing the role. So we've had sort of a lot of Iron Man games over the past sort of 10 years. But they've been varying in terms of their quality, in terms of their appeal and what they're trying to do. This should be interesting. As I said, it is still very early days. Pre-production is still very much ongoing for it. We may see something next year, but I don't think we're going to see anything until Dead Space releases at least. We might get a teaser trailer at some point, maybe at like the Game Awards, but who knows. As I said, we really don't know anything. All they've said is that the game will feature an original narrative that taps into the rich history of Iron Man, channeling the complexity, charisma, and creative genius of Tony Stark, and enabling players to feel what it's like to truly play as Iron Man. Beyond that, as I said, we don't know anything. We know it's a single-player game. There's not going to be any multiplayer at this stage. It's going to be purely focused on a story-driven experience, which should be plenty for some folks. Moving into the world of soccer, or football, depending on what part of the world you live in, EA have been releasing all the FIFA Ultimate Team stats over the last couple of days, or last couple of weeks, I should say. But during the week, they also announced that a whole new team is being added to FIFA 23, including their manager, Ted Lasso. So yes, the character of Ted Lasso is coming to FIFA 23 as a playable manager. So you can actually, in the football manager career, you can be Ted, making decisions for teams and celebrating, when your team wins and all that sort of stuff. It's not just that it's the character, Jason Sudeikis, who plays the character, who did it in the original NBC commercials. So this entire character started out as a joke in a bunch of commercials for, I think it was the Olympics back then. And then obviously the Apple TV series, he's back in recording, lines as Ted, so you can actually have Ted on the side of the pitch. In addition to that, the AFC Richmond team is in the game, and will feature, Roy Kent, Jamie Trart, Sam Obisanya, and Danny Rojas, as part of the squad. There's also, rich AFC Richmond memorabilia and items that you can unlock in Pro Clubs and Ultimate Team. So you can actually have, I'm just trying to think who's a popular soccer player. Ronaldo, for example, you could have him dressed up as, AFC Richmond and have, Ted Lasso coaching him off to the side. It's kind of very interesting because I think this is the first time we've ever seen, a fictional character appear in basically a real world game. Obviously, if you're not a Ted Lasso fan, this is not going to make a lot of sense to you. It is unfortunately too only for FIFA 23, so the Legacy Edition on Switch gets nothing. So Switch owners still getting screwed over by EA there. But yeah, it's the full thing, and it's kind of insane that it's happening. Yes, Tabs, I know I keep saying Laszlo. It's Lasso. I do mix them up. But yeah, it's kind of bizarre that they're doing it purely because who would have thought that they'd, bring in a fake character to their real game? Especially given that this is the last year that FIFA, that EA Sports is having the FIFA license, right? If they wanted to really sort of kick things off with a bang, they could have done it for their what is it, EA Sports FC or something, I think it's called, which is next year's release. They could have brought Ted Lasso in there next year, as a real big sort of surprise. Have more fun with their own brand where they don't have to license everything out to FIFA or license, get approval from FIFA on everything. But yeah, so it is in their day one. As I said, you could do the whole career mode, as Ted through your thing. Yes, that last Laszlo was intentional. But yeah, so again, it's cool, but unless you're a massive Ted Lasso fan, I don't think this is going to make any difference to you. I don't think people are going to rush out and buy FIFA 23 just because he's now, in it. So, it is what it is. Moving on into the world of hardware, though, we have two updates. One is for the PlayStation VR2, and one is for Xbox Series X and S owners. The first one being the PlayStation VR2, we actually got a tech breakdown from PlayStation via a new trailer. So the new trailer is here. It doesn't actually show anything. It just does close-ups of CGI versions of the tech. But what we do know is that the screens will actually be two displays that'll have a resolution of 2000 by 2040, which when combined will give you a resolution of 4K. So even though they keep saying it's a 4K screen, it's not technically 4K. It's 4K by default, that it's 2 into 1. Much like if you said your Nintendo DS had, twice the resolution because you're counting both screens at once. So, it's 4K, but only if you're using both screens. They do support 120 frames a second, so it is a very fast refreshing display. And they also have a 110-degree field of view, meaning that you should be able to have the headset sit, pretty well anywhere on your head, and see all the action. Currently, the PlayStation VR headset, Oculus Quest, some HTC Vives or the Steam Vive, some of them do not have a great viewing angle, so you have to sort of get it quite accurate, otherwise you end up with a blurry image. So 110 degrees is quite a bit bigger than we're used to, so that should accommodate for that. The headset will also offer eye tracking. So if you're not looking, if your eyes are closed or things like that, the game may not display everything at full brightness. If you're looking off to the left, the game will maybe focus the information off to the left a bit more than off to the right, to sort of keep everything running as smooth as it can. The headset also features 4 cameras on the outside, which we can see there in the thumbnail from the YouTube video. That is very much like the Oculus series, where there's and the HTC Vive, where there's cameras everywhere. So there's no external camera required for the PlayStation VR2, which is something that the PlayStation VR currently requires. So you'll be able to play it without having to worry about a camera connected to your PlayStation. In the headband, the bit that goes around the top of your head, there will actually be a haptic feedback, sensor in there now. So if you are playing a game and you get shot in the head, you could probably feel getting hit in the head with a bullet because, it's there in the headset. It also supports, the full 3D audio that the PlayStation 5 offers, all those bells and whistles. The thing that's very, very exciting though, especially if you have suffered the hassle of trying to set up a PlayStation VR, is that it will connect through a single USB cable to your PlayStation 5. The problem there is they haven't said what type of connection it'll be. They've just said through a front USB port on the PlayStation 5. There's a USB Type-C and a USB Type-A port on the front. So, I'm expecting it to be the Type-C because that's the new generation of connector. But they've not said, so, we'll have to leave that up in the air. The controller also got a few extra call-outs. So it will offer haptic feedback in the triggers, like the PlayStation 5's DualSense controller does. It also has, finger tracking, so it'll actually know the difference between you holding your finger above the trigger button and on the button, and then obviously pulling the trigger in. So there'll be a range of settings to make use of. It also has, the 3D motion sense, so it'll actually be able to tell you where things are in the world, where your controllers are in the world, connected to your headset, and all that sort of stuff. The trailer, it doesn't show anything fancy hardware-wise. It just does these random close-ups. But we do get a few moments of gameplay from Horizon Call of the Mountain and not Saints and Sinners 2. Well, we do get a bit of that, but there's another first-person shooter that's in there. I can't think of what it is now. Yeah, so there you go. Firewall Ultra. That's the one I was thinking of. This shows off the the finger tracking on the controller. But yeah, so it obviously has an insane level of tech inside of it. The only concern that I have is that the amount of tech is going to raise this price up to be unaffordable for most gamers. I fully expect it to be the price of a PlayStation 5, if not a little bit more. The fact you need a PlayStation 5 to make use of it isn't ideal. We may see a PC connector or support for PCs come from modders, which would be great, especially because it's just a USB connection. But the price, which they've not announced anything for price, given that we've got two OLED displays, capable of 4K, 120 frames a second, plus haptic feedback in the controllers, the headset, 3D audio, multiple cameras, tracking, eye tracking technology isn't cheap either. I honestly expect it to at least match the cost of a PlayStation 5. So, if you're buying a PlayStation 5 today, $750, if they're not already gone up to $800 here, and then you want the PSVR2, say next March when it launches, which that's not confirmation of a date, I'm just saying as an example, there's another $750. And you got to remember, neither of those come with games. So, you're paying $1,500 just for the hardware, then you need to get games on top of it. So, Astrobot, the tech demos on the PlayStation 5, but that's not a VR game. So, yeah. And then obviously, last week we got confirmation that PlayStation VR2 is not backwards compatible with any PlayStation VR games. So the Iron Man VR game that I mentioned earlier, it's now trapped on the PlayStation VR headset because Sony own the publishing rights to that game. So they may opt to allow someone to port it to PC, right? But that's not a guarantee. But all these other VR experiences, so Moss and Moss Book 1, Moss Book 2, Book 2 just came out earlier this year, they're both locked to PlayStation VR. They will not work if you buy PlayStation VR 2 day one. So it's really, PlayStation are making very, very bad decisions lately. Upping the price of the console, releasing a VR headset that's not backwards compatible. And then, of course, there's the potential that everything, inside this is going to make the price just too high for most gamers. That's not to say it won't be, more affordable. They could, do, a very surprising thing and say, no, this is going to release, and it's going to release, at 500 Australian dollars, right? They could do that, and it would be amazing. But Sony don't do that. Sony don't take loss on hardware if they can avoid it. And because of all the tech in this one, and the fact that it is a very niche product, I fully expect that they're not going to sacrifice any potential money from selling this thing. So, but who knows what's going to happen with Sony. The other thing, as I said, with hardware is that the Xbox platforms, so Series X and S, got an update that finally lets you manage your library. So currently with your Xbox, well, prior to this update I should say, when you downloaded a game, it always installed to the same internal storage location, regardless if it was an XS or Xbox One. This new update lets you actually tell the console, hey, I'm downloading, Burnout Paradise from the Xbox 360. Right? I own it. I want to download it. You can actually say to the console, hey, right, if it's an Xbox Series X or S title, install it to the internal so you can play it there because that's what's required. If it's an older game, install it to this hard drive, right? And then you can actually specify to tell the Xbox, actually, I want you to install Xbox One games to this hard drive, Xbox 360 and Xbox original games to this hard drive. You can actually start telling it where to install the games based on the platform that they're from. In addition to being able to tell it where to install, there's actually now a new series of headers across the tab in the library that let you just break down, right, these are all the games that I own. So own meaning that you buy, not games that you get through subscriptions. And then you've got your Game Pass library, your EA Play library, which is part of Game Pass, your Xbox Live Gold redemption games. So I think Thrillville is still one of them this month. So those games, will be under that one. When Ubisoft Classics or Ubisoft Plus launches on Xbox, that'll likely have its own header as well. So yeah, so they're just doing a lot of things to make everything far simpler in terms of access for players. They still haven't added a download option to say, no, only download updates for these games or for games during this time. That would be amazing if they do that, but they're not doing that because that just seems silly. As I said, we got the storage options as well. If you own the Xbox Elite 2 controller, either the original black model, the Halo edition that came out with Halo Infinite, or the new Core Elite, the white version, you can now update the Xbox guide button color to be anything you want it to be. So you can use the on-screen sliders to pick a color, adjust the hue, the saturation of it, or if you know the hex code of your favorite color, you can actually just add the hex code in and do it there. This is actually the second update to the console in a matter of weeks. Last week we also got an update that has an AI script sort of running in the background now for noise reduction. So when you're in a voice chat, the console will actually remove any ambient noise outside of a certain field from the microphone to ensure that nobody's hearing anything from the background of your room that they shouldn't be. So, people making noise in another room, chip packets being opened, stuff like that. Those same functions are now also on the PC that updated alongside the consoles to bring that to it. And there's also now the ability to share, when you take a screenshot on your Xbox, it'll upload to Xbox Live. You can view it on your PC through the app. You can now share it straight from the app to Twitter and Facebook and all those sort of things. So that's very, very nice to see. With all that news done, it means it's time to look forward to the week ahead and what games are coming out. Obviously, this is the last week of September, so next week we'll be deep diving into the games of October. But for now, the games coming out starting technically as of the 24th of September, which is Saturday. It's unlikely we'll see any games release over the weekend because there are no events, thankfully. But the next sort of big day that we'll see games releasing is the 27th, which is next Tuesday. On that day, we'll see the full release of Grounded from Xbox. The game is currently in game preview on Xbox consoles and early access on PC. You can get it now and start playing it. When the full release comes out on Tuesday, it'll just add the rest of the story modes and a bunch of finalized features to the game. That is not to say they won't update it and add more content as down the line, but it is now officially 1.0 version. We'll also see Hoko Life Grounded is coming to Xbox One, Series X and S, and PC. It is included in Game Pass. The 27th will also see the release of Hoko Life for PC, Switch, PS4, and Xbox One. It is kind of like Animal Crossing. It's just another one of those sort of life simulation games. Switch owners will also finally get Life is Strange via the Arcadia Bay collection, which just includes Life is Strange and Life is Strange Before the Storm, so 1 and 2. Moonscars will release on all platforms next week, finally having been dated just the other day. And Tunic will be launching on Switch and PlayStation platforms on the 27th. It is already available on PC and PlayStation, Xbox consoles. On the 29th, we will see the release of Bullet Soul and Bullet Soul Infinite Burst for Switch. their shmups. It's just more shmup. We'll also see the first console release of Dofromantik on Switch next week as well. We'll also see on PC and PlayStation 4 Railgrade release. That is a rail simulator game where you have to manage multiple tracks of rails in order to get goods from factories and depots and to their final destination. PlayStation players will also finally get the release of Sam & Max Save the World Remastered, which released on PC and Switch in that last year. And they'll finally get the debut of Sam & Max Beyond Time and Space as well next week on PlayStation. So when the Sam & Max games were done by Telltale Games, the Beyond Time and Space never released on PlayStation. Save the World had released on PlayStation, but never Beyond Time and Space. So this is actually the debut in the PlayStation family for that series. It is the remastered version. We reviewed both the Switch versions of these games. They're still the same basic gameplay as the old Telltale stuff. They just look better now. Valkyrie Elysium will also release on the 29th for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. As I said before, the PC version of that is coming out in November, so still a while for that one. Earlier today, though, however, Valkyrie Profile Lenneth, which is sort of the remaster of the old game, which is coming as a bonus for the PlayStation, the digital deluxe for Valkyrie Elysium, that has been delayed a month. It can be bought separately, but you will not be able to buy it now for another month. So it was due out the same day. They've since given it a delay. The 30th, which is next Friday, we'll see the release of a few games from Sodesco, so Bunny Park and Lemon Cake. They're very, very cute, just charming, relaxing sort of games, nothing sort of too strenuous there. We'll also see the release of Arrowheart, again from Sodesco. Now, Arrowheart is a Legend of Zelda Link to the Past inspired game developed here in Australia by sort of one developer. It was done through supported through Kickstarter. After the Kickstarter was done, Sodesco reached out to say, hey, we like what you're doing, we want to help publish this and bring it to more gamers, so that's what's happening there. We'll also see a couple of outright games next week, so My Little Pony, a Maritime Bay Adventure, and Paw Patrol Grand Prix. Obviously, they're aimed at the younger gamer. And then, ending out the month will be FIFA 23 and FIFA 23 Legacy Edition for all platforms. Well, sorry, FIFA 23 will be everything but Switch, and FIFA 23 Legacy Edition is Switch only. And that is the next week in games. So with that, it does bring us to the end of the episode. I actually didn't think we'd run this long, but maybe I ranted a little bit too long on the video. But yeah, so this coming Tuesday will be the final episode of the James Bond series. So this will be week number 36 of playing James Bond games on stream. We have gotten through everything from GoldenEye up through to Legends. We're finishing off the GoldenEye remake on Tuesday. It has been fun doing those, so I'm looking very, very forward to playing through the final, section of the GoldenEye remake. After that, who knows what's going to happen. So we'll be back at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time for that one on Tuesday, and then we'll be back again next Friday for more Maxi-Geek Show, again at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Next week, however, though, will be the final 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time show, because that weekend is when daylight savings kicks in. So it'll still be 7 p.m. Sydney time. We just, however, will be on daylight savings time then. So just be aware of that. Times will shift a little bit. Otherwise, we'll catch you when we're online next time. And until then, happy gaming.